Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And Shane, we don't have anything to talk about. We always do. It's Wildcat Country. But there are no coaches that have been fired, no coaches that have left, no Arizona sports teams still playing.
Well, you just jinxed it, Eric, because right after I upload this to Apple, there's going to be one coach that's out or there's going to be a scandal or something.
Well, last week on the show, I was whining about there being no transfer news for Arizona men's basketball. And then look what happened. There were two commits. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to have the professor, as I like to call him, Matt Moreno from Rivals.com, going to join us with a wealth of info on football, basketball, and probably more than that. So, Shane, let's get right into it. It is Buy or Sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. If you're looking for a great Father's Day gift, go to iceshaker.com and use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, to get $5 off your Ice Shaker. Okay, Shane, let's get right to it. I know that I've been dogged on Twitter for this, and deservedly so. Last week on the show, I was complaining about Tommy Lloyd. Number one, buy or sell with the two commits. That's Cedric Henderson from Campbell and Courtney Ramey from Texas. Maybe Tommy Lloyd does know what he's doing after all in the transfer portal. Buy or sell?
I'll buy that he knows what he's doing. I figured he'd land a couple eventually. You talk about getting criticized on Twitter. I was a little underwhelmed by the duo that he signed. Since then, I feel a little bit better, but I got a lot of heat for that, which is not the first time and won't be the last. But no, I think he knows what he's doing. I think that, and maybe I need to remember this as well. Sometimes it's not about, what is it? The old saying, you don't want I want the best players. I want the right players, and these are two good players. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you look at their numbers don't jump out at you. Courtney Ramey in particular. I mean,
He's a good player.
Did great with Shaka Smart. I know at Texas when he was there. Career 40% shooter overall, decent 3-point shooter. So, but you talk about the defense and the leadership. I do like that they added some guys who have some NCAA, or at least with Ramey, some NCAA tournament experience. So, overall it was good. I think. Do I think they're going to be I think anyone expecting them to be as good as they were last season is in for disappointment. With that said, I said unequivocally last year at this time that UCLA was going to run away with a Pac-12 title, and look what happened. So you never know. Certainly feel better about it now. I think Tommy Lloyd's done as good a job as possible, replacing some guys who I think are tough to replace with their unique skill sets. Christian Koloko with his defense and Dalen Terry as one of the top glue guys, as we like to say. And then of course Ben Matherin, who was probably top
star,
NBA draft pick. Yeah. So I think he's done okay. I think he's leaned heavily on the international guys, which I'm fine with as long as they come through, and they have to a large extent. But you lose three of the top three, or maybe three of the top four guys from last season from a team that was one of the best in the country throughout the year. It's tough to replace them in the transfer portal and just through international recruiting. But again, just because some of those guys don't jump out on paper as much, or at least personally as much as I would like, doesn't mean they're not good fits for Arizona.
No, and I agree. And I think it's nice that he rounded out the roster. With that said, I am still going to stand by what I said last week. I am still somewhat questioning Tommy Lloyd's transfer portal skills. In looking at I know we are having Matt from Rivals.com, but 24/7 Sports does a transfer portal rankings. Cedric Henderson was unranked in the top 100. Courtney Ramey was 54th.
Mm-hmm.
That does not inspire confidence after you lose your three best players. So
Go ahead, Eric. Finish your thought.
This is a minor sell, but it's a sell nonetheless.
So I'm going to offer this, that I feel like, because we had a couple of guests on in the know who said that if Dalen Terry, if it wasn't for the NIL, Dalen Terry probably would have declared for the draft a long time ago, and not just kept one foot back in Tucson. I think that might have actually hurt Arizona, because I think that a lot of the possible transfers who might have looked at Arizona without Dalen Terry being there a couple of months ago in other words, they might have gotten a better transfer or two, or at least one better transfer earlier in the process if they knew Dalen Terry was gone.
Yeah.
But the fact that
I agree with
that he was maybe considering the NIL money, because we learned that in NIL, he could have gotten as much on NIL as he would have as a second round draft pick. But that eventually I think he was convinced, okay, I'm going to be a first round pick. And for his sake, I hope he is. And I think that actually inadvertently hurt Arizona, him weighing his options for as long as he did.
Okay, number 2, buy or sell. Arizona is a top 25 lock, Shane, if not higher, after filling out its roster. Likely done with Cedric Henderson and Courtney Ramey.
Got to sell that one, Eric. I think maybe they are a top 25 team, but when you lose, 4, it was an 8-man roster. They lost 4 of those guys. And again, arguably the top 3, I would say 3 of the top 4, certainly with Azuolas Tubelis in the mix. I know we're all still mad at him because of what happened in the NCAA tournament, or what didn't happen in the NCAA tournament, but he was obviously one of their top guys last season. So you lose 3 of your top 4 guys, 3 starters, and then Justin Kier, of course, who was a great leader off the bench, senior. It's tough to replace those guys, even with some of the best transfers. And, they had a couple of okay transfers, a couple of international guys who you never know if they're going to adjust to the college game, and if so, how quickly. And of course, that's true for high school guys as well.
Sure.
But a lock, no. I think they probably are a top 25 team, but a lock, I can't put a lock on it. No.
Okay, fair. I think they are a top 25 lock to start the year.
Okay.
Are they a top 25 lock as far as going to stay there the whole year? I can't say that, but I think they will be probably in the teens, in the late teens is where I expect to see Arizona in mid, in the early preseason polls. Now, I think our buddy Aaron Torres had them like right around 10-ish. I don't think after losing your 3 best guys that you can stay in the top 15.
He had him in the top 10 even after Dalen Terry.
I think he did. I'd have to double check that.
We got to have him on and talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's always down to come on, and
he's an Arizona optimist. He is.
Yeah, he is.
He defended Arizona throughout the whole FBI investigation. So Sean Miller likes him.
Yes. Sean Miller does like him. Yes. All right. Number 3, it's not fair, Shane, to expect Arizona to be a Sweet 16 caliber team every season by yourself.
I'm going to sell it. They should be a Sweet 16 caliber team every season with the pedigree of this program, the history, the guys they have with Tommy, and now with Tommy Lloyd having proven himself as a good coach. And obviously he did it with some of Sean Miller's guys, but they went from unranked to the national number 2 team. Arizona, and we talked about this. Who was we were talking about this with? I think with Travis Graff a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That, there you have these tiers in college basketball, and I think the top tier, you have 4 teams. You have Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Duke in whatever order you want to put them. And I would have put Villanova up there as well, except Jay Wright's gone. And then you have that second tier of teams that I think at least have the perception that they're a Final Four caliber team more often than not, even though Arizona hasn't been in a long time. I think Arizona is still perception wise in that second tier. And I don't think and maybe that would have changed if Tommy Lloyd had struggled in this first year, but he didn't. They were great. They were a fun team to watch. They had a lot of exposure on national television. I know they fizzled out in the NCAA tournament, but they weren't the only great team to do that. A lot of teams do every single year. Gonzaga lost the same night that Arizona did. So I think that they should be a Sweet 16 caliber team. I mean, things happen in the NCAA tournament. Lute Olson lost with Arizona as a 3 seed and a 2 seed in consecutive years in the first round.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So that happens, and they won the whole thing as a 4 seed. But in terms of being a team that, they should at least get to the Sweet 16 and contend for the Final Four, more often than not, I think they should. Maybe in today's college basketball landscape, it's a little unrealistic to do what Lute Olson did because he had them in that category every single year. But I would say 2 out of every 3 years, at least, Arizona should be in that discussion.
Okay. You know what? I respect that. I'll stand by that. And I was going to say no at first. I was going to say sell.
I convinced you.
You did convince me. Yeah. Arizona should be a top 16 team in the country with Tommy Lloyd, considering what he did in his first year, his Gonzaga pedigree. Yeah, I'm buying that. Good call. You actually swayed me there. So I was going to sell. All right. We're going to switch from basketball. We're going to talk to Matt Moreno more about these new commits and their impact on the team. So the Pac-12 announced in softball that they're going to do a single elimination tournament for the postseason, and it's going to be played next year. The first one's going to be played at Hillenbrand Stadium.
Yeah.
Are you buying or selling the fact that this tournament is single elimination, that it's a good idea?
I guess I could buy or sell it in that I don't think it's necessary to have one of these. I don't think it's necessary in baseball either. I think it's fine, but there's just so many games already that do you really need a few more at the end of the season? I guess if you're going to have a tournament, I would rather it be double elimination because so many wacky things can happen in softball. You can softball and college baseball for that matter. There are sports where you can lose a series 2 out of 3 and your ranking might only drop a couple spots because it's one series. Okay. It's not like in football where if you lose one game, it could alter your whole season.
Right.
So that's why they have the double elimination typically in regionals and in the College World Series, because anything can happen in one game. It's not fair to judge a baseball or softball team on one game. So you give them a second chance. So I think if you're going to have a tournament, I would buy that it should be double elimination, but I'm also not sold on the idea that you really need this tournament in the first place. But it is very cool that it's in Tucson.
Yes, I agree that it's in Tucson. It's cool that it's in Tucson. I'm selling the crap out of this one, Shane. First of all, I agree that you don't really need one. The Pac-12 is already a dominant conference. I don't know if maybe you're trying to sneak another team in that maybe wasn't that good, but in softball, the haves definitely outweigh the have-nots in most cases. There are, with the rare exception of the Arizonas who were not very good, and then they make it to Oklahoma City. It happens, but I don't think it's necessary, number one. And number two, the one thing that's great about baseball and softball in the tournament in general is double elimination. To have a single elimination tournament is just plain stupid. It's not football. It's not basketball. It's absolutely ridiculous. I am selling the crap out of this one. I hate it. Okay.
So how do you really feel about it?
How do I really feel? Okay. Bonus question. So today, Shane, we're recording this on Tuesday. Arizona added a transfer running back that our friend John Wall Street, Corey Leff, had hinted at on Twitter. DJ Williams comes from Florida State via Auburn. He is a little guy. I think he's like 5'8", 5'9". I mean, he's on his third school. I think Arizona's running back room is already too deep. Is this really a necessary pickup for Jed Fish at this point in time?
I'll sell that it was necessary, but I don't mind the addition. I mean, certainly I think, their top priority is still offensive line, but if they're not going to get a guy who they think is going to be a bona fide starter on the offensive line in time for this coming season, then I don't really think it's that big a deal. Maybe this guy's a JJ Taylor type, a guy who's a speedy guy who just, because I like that they have a bunch of different types of tailbacks on this roster. And I think that he'll be in the mix, although I think it might be tough for him to get on the field much, even ahead of the two freshmen they have coming in.
That's where I have the problem with it, Shane. Yeah. You have a loaded running back room. I mean, I can't even name all the guys offhand, but just look at Speedy Luke, Jonah Coleman, Stevie Rocker, Michael Wiley, Drake Anderson. I'm sure I'm missing other, how many more running backs do you need?
Yeah.
It's like wide receivers, quarterbacks, and running back. You just don't need any more of those.
Well, I was a little surprised by DJ Williams' decision as well, just because it's right. I'm sure he wanted to go to a school because he came from Florida State where he could actually get some playing time. Then why would you pick Arizona, which is loaded at that position now? Obviously,
no idea.
He got sold the idea he's going to be able to see the field, but maybe he thinks he will. Maybe that's the intention, but that's no guarantee. So it was a bold move, but then again, maybe Arizona was his only real option. So I don't really know. With that said, I hope he does great things and where, he goes out and makes some big plays and, scores 3 times against ASU and all that good stuff. But
I love that last part. Yeah.
Bit of a head scratcher though. I agree, but I don't mind the move, but I was surprised by it.
Yeah. A very strange move as far as I'm concerned. Let's talk to Matt Moreno about that. I want to thank our friends at Ice Shaker for sponsoring Buy or Sell. And now it's time for the professor, Matt Moreno, here on Wildcat Country. Scooby, we sent you an ice shaker. They are a sponsor, courtesy of our buddy Chris Gronkowski. You have it right there.
I love my ice shaker. Fun fact: when I trained with Glenn Gronkowski, everybody, when we were trained together, people thought I was the other Gronk brother. So it was kind of funny. But yes, I love my ice shaker. It is very good. I use it every day. I am a veteran to the ice shaker game, by the way.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here. Use coupon code Wildcat Country at iceshaker.com.
All right, everyone. Class is in session. The professor, Matt Moreno, who is also I believe he's still the senior editor of GoAZCats.com, but he also does Pac-12. He's like the Pac-12 recruiting guru for rivals. Joins us here on Wildcat Country, our most frequent guest. So welcome back, Matt. Glad to have you, yeah. Professor. Yes. Yeah, professor. My first question is: so do you miss Kevin Sumlin, who never really had much recruiting going on in the summertime? And now with Jed Fish, you have to work a lot harder because of all these commits.
I miss having some time off. So maybe I miss Kevin Sumlin a little bit. No, I like Kevin Sumlin. I thought he was fun to cover, but yeah, recruiting has definitely changed over these last couple of years. It's we're kind of still feeling it all out and seeing where it goes. But June is the action month, it seems. I mean, it has been the last 2 years now, and I knew that. I had a feeling. Obviously, this is when everyone pretty much across the country is loading up on official visits is during June. Technically, recruits can start taking official visits in April, but most schools don't, bother doing that. UCLA was one school that opted to have a bunch of official visits in May. Actually worked out for them. They got a couple big time commitments in May, or are in a good position with some other guys because I think they were, saying, hey, let's jump the gun and let's see, if we can get them out and get them committed before they even take other trips. And so I think you're going to see a lot more programs try and do that next year and try and have that same idea, because the one thing that I've noticed, and it's different than years before, and I think it's only going to get worse until we figure out what happens with the transfer portal and how it all settles in. But recruits are scared. I mean, they're afraid they're going to lose their spot. And so they don't want to wait and, lose out on a chance to go to a school that they really want to go to. So a lot of them are committing. A lot of them are taking one official visit and saying, that's it. It's all I needed to see. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to commit, and we'll kind of figure it out from there. Maybe I'll take some other visits. Maybe I won't. But, talking to a lot of recruits, they said that transfer portal is really making things different. And so, obviously Arizona this week picked up another transfer, a really late one. Recruits are worried about space, and, you can't really blame them because there are space limitations. As much as, the NCAA is going to allow schools to go over 25 signees in the next two recruiting cycles, there is still, space limitations, and a lot of those spots are going to end up going to transfers. So I think everything is being sped up once again, which is what the NCAA didn't want. But we're going to have to, assess things and see where it goes from here. So we'll see. I mean, I know there's been talk of potentially having just maybe 2 times of the year when transfers are allowed to happen. And then, every other time of the year, they're not allowed to happen. You can't just transfer whenever. So we'll kind of see what happens and how it goes. But that's kind of been the theme of the first, 6 months or so, I guess 5.5 months. But recruits are just saying, I don't think I can wait. I would probably like to. I'd like to see teams play this season and see how they look, but I don't think my spot's going to be there, if I wait until November. So I think you're seeing that with Arizona's class. I think you're seeing that, all across the country, that recruits are a little hesitant to decide to wait. So, and I can't blame them, like I said. So that's kind of been the crux of everything. But, for Arizona, they load up and get 12 commitments, before the middle of June. So we'll kind of see where it goes from here. But, a lot of positive things for Arizona.
Yeah, Matt, if we spent time breaking down each commit, we'd be out here for like 2 or 3 hours. So I want to mention one in particular, though, because outside of Brayman Dorman, great 4-star quarterback who committed early to Arizona, looks like maybe their best commit for 2023, other than him to this point, is Carter Stoutmeyer. He's a 3-star cornerback out of Texas. What can you tell us about him?
He has connections to Dwayne Walker. His dad is Omar Stoutmeyer, played in the NFL. As I was doing some research on him, and I said, I think, because I knew his dad is Omar, I said, let me go through his kind of bio and see where he played. And then I said, I think Dwayne Walker might have coached him. So I looked it up and I said, I think their times overlap. And I had it wrong. I thought he coached him in Washington, which he did. But Carter, when I talked to him, he said he actually coached him with the Giants as well. And so they spent a lot of time together. And so there was that connection there. And so it was, I think, a cool moment for father and son to, have one be, coached by Dwayne Walker in the NFL and have another having an opportunity to play for him in college. And I think that mattered. I think that was a big part of this process. And, Carter, I think, really just liked Dwayne Walker. I think outside of that whole connection, I think he just really enjoyed, getting to know Dwayne Walker. And so he's going to come in as maybe a little bit smaller corner than what they're used to and what they've been really trying to go after. But you have to like the pedigree. The bloodlines are strong. Anytime you can have the son of an NFL player, especially one that played in the league for a long time, that's positive. But yeah, it's an interesting class for sure. I think some of the guys that they've taken so far, I don't know that they would have taken last year. I think this is a different situation where they're starting to kind of build out the roster and they can, take a chance on some guys that need to develop a little bit. Last year was about like, they need to make a splash. They need to find, guys that can plug holes right away and can come in and start. And you can, give that opportunity to those players. And you say, we need players who can, come in and play and start making an immediate impact. I think you started to kind of fill up some of those holes if you're Arizona. So I think you can take a chance on some guys. There are some, very talented prospects, but I think what this also tells me,
seeing that they've taken so many early commitments is that it's going to be another really big class. Maybe the biggest we've seen at Arizona, just because, like I mentioned, the NCAA is removing the 25-man limit that, teams are typically have to stay under or stay within because, just recruiting rules. So because of the transfer portal and because of COVID and everything that went on, the NCAA is saying we're going to take away that 25-man limit. As long as you have room on your 85-man roster, sign as many as you want. So you can sign 60 recruits if you want, if you have the room for them. And so I think that's based on who Arizona has taken so far and taking commitments from, because, a lot of these guys, not a lot of them, but some of them are Arizona's their biggest offer. And Arizona, I think, quite frankly, could have waited a little bit longer and said, oh, we'll take them later. But I know Arizona likes all of them, would have really taken them at any time. But to me, I think that tells me that it's going to be a pretty big class. And so I think that's one thing to expect, is that this is only a portion of the group. Most of those commitments came on the first, official visit weekend. There's been a few, cactus gifts that have gone out since the second weekend or over the second weekend. The third weekend is probably going to be the biggest. And, then it's after that, it's trying to get some guys on campus during the season and all that. But, I think, every week they're kind of taking a step forward in terms of the talent on campus. There's a lot of talent on campus, this last weekend. And so I think you're going to see this class continue to, right now it's kind of more about quantity. There's only, I think, 10 programs that have more commitments than Arizona at this point, maybe even 9 or 8 at this point. So, there's a lot of recruits in this class. And so that's kind of shifting the rankings a little bit. They do have a top 25 class right now, which, that's quality as well. But I think where you're going to start to see things and go, okay, that's a real like Arizona class. That's something that they've built on because of last year, because of the last cycle. I think you're going to start to see those start to pop up here over the next couple of weeks and then into August and, as they get closer into the season. But I like the group so far. I think there's, a couple hidden gems, a couple guys that I think can make an impact, pretty early on. But overall, I really like kind of what they've done the last couple of weeks. And you mentioned Carter Stoutmeyer. I think Arian Parrish is another, talented player. Another DB from Texas. Chuck Cecil really targeted him, at Katy High School in the Houston area. I think he's very talented as well. And I think he's someone who can, contribute at that safety spot pretty early on in his career.
You mentioned, Matt, the recent transfer that our guy, Corey Leff, aka John Wall Street, sort of broke last weekend. Tell us about DJ Williams, running back transfer from Auburn and more recently Florida State. What should Wildcat fans know about him? And are you kind of surprised that he'd want to join such a, in my opinion, a very talented running back room going into next season?
I think so, but I think he was battling for time at Florida State, and it wasn't, necessarily looking like he was going to get a huge opportunity to be, the main guy at Florida State. So if you're a graduate transfer and you have another opportunity to transfer again, which because of the rules, if you graduate, you have a chance to, transfer a second time and so and be immediately eligible. So at that point, it's just about finding the right spot. And for Arizona, I think, this is the way I've been explaining it, because I've had a lot of those calls today, and I've heard got a lot of messages about that. Why would they take someone like this? Why would they? That's not what they need at this point. But for anybody who covered the team or spent any amount of time around the team during the season and even spring ball, the one thing that Jedd Fisch didn't want to have is a lack of scoring, and he wants to score touchdowns. He wants to score points. So if they are going to err on the side of going too heavy out of position, it's going to be offensively, in my opinion, because Jedd Fisch is the head coach, but he's also the play caller and the offensive mind behind everything. And you just don't want to be in that position. You want to be the one who's leading the team. And, offensively, they really struggled. And so I think it's not a huge shock to see them add an offensive player. I think everyone was thinking offensive lineman for a while now. But it also has to be the right fit. And, at this point, you're talking about mid-June, most guys kind of have, they made their decisions. There's not a lot out there. And so, DJ Williams, he's the nephew of Edgerrin James. So he has, strong bloodlines as well. Was a pretty highly touted recruit coming out of high school. Like you mentioned, went to Auburn. Actually was pretty productive there. Wasn't the top guy, but was pretty productive. I think he just had difficulties at Florida State trying to kind of, find his way. I think he's going to have a great opportunity at Arizona. I do think he's going to be in line to be, one of the top 2 backs at this point. I just think that the staff wouldn't bring him on unless he's going to be, a big part of things. And I don't think he would join the team unless he's going to be a big part of things. And, one thing that, talking to a lot of players and a lot of recruits that they've mentioned about this coaching staff, at least at this point in the year, is they feel that they're being genuine and they appreciate, the coaching staff being up front. And, if you guys have had a chance to talk to Scotty Graham or listen to him, I mean, he's up front about things. And so I think,
with someone like DJ Williams, I think it's clear of what his role is going to be. And so, I think he's going to really, factor into things at the running back position. It's a large group, but I also think there's so much, versatility within that group that you're going to see other guys, you're going to see guys do other things within the offense, not just running the ball. And so, quite frankly, Arizona needed someone that they could give the ball to every down. And, they've had some health issues back there. And I think they just want to have somebody who's they can turn to and be, who's consistent. And so I think that they believe they found that with DJ Williams. And we'll see what happens, but it is definitely an interesting group. There's a lot of players there. We'll see if it kind of survives through camp and if everybody stays intact. But, I don't think at this point in the year, if you're not going to find, an impact offensive line, because it doesn't help Arizona at this point just to add depth at offensive line. I mean, they need someone who can play. And if you can't find that, then you need to find someone at another position who can play, because that's kind of where they're at. They just need to start racking up some wins. And they need someone who can contribute right now, not a project. And so, they went after a few offensive linemen, didn't really, work out for them. But, I think at the end of the day, it was about, can you get someone who can help you win games? And I think they believe they found that with DJ Williams.
All right. So about the offensive linemen, first of all, so they've got these 12 commits for 2023, and I don't see an offensive lineman's name on that list. Do you expect there to be an influx of linemen with the next wave of commits?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where, the targets have been for most of the time. Rhino is actually an offensive lineman. I know he's listed as a defensive line, but he plays offensive line. He's going to come in as an offensive tackle. So and I really like him. I think he's very much underrated. I think maybe not a lot of coaches have had a chance to see him as much, or maybe they just, are missing on the evaluations. Maybe I'm missing on the evaluation, but I'm really impressed by him. I saw him earlier in the spring. He held his own against, a lot of the top defensive linemen, at a camp in the spring. And so I really like what he brings to the table. I think he's exactly what Arizona needs. I think he can help right away, but he's also someone that I think could be developed a little bit and become a really strong offensive lineman for this team. So, I think, they're in a good spot with him, but Caleb Lomu is the one that I'm really interested to see what happens. He just picked up an offer from USC last week. He visited USC and UCLA and then took an official visit to Arizona. He's from Highland High School in Gilbert. He's made no secret that Arizona is his top school. And he's been very clear about that. Now, that was before the USC offer came into play. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that transpires and what happens there and how they go about that, because now he's on the radar and, he's going to be someone that USC wants, and that could be difficult. But I think if you can get him, that's going to put you in a really strong position. And then, you have some other guys that are going to be, visiting, or guys that, that are in the mix, that I think Arizona is going to really have a run on offensive line. And I think, soonish, I think you'll start to see some of those guys, start to pop up as commitments for Arizona. I think, maybe not necessarily this week or next week, but I think as the summer kind of gets closer to ending, I think in the season gets, closer, I think you'll start to see some offensive linemen start to pick some schools and pick Arizona. But that's definitely one of those positions that the staff has really focused on, that and defensive line. I know they've really tried to attack the defensive line. I've been able to address that quite a bit already in this class. They have some big visitors coming in this weekend that could address that. And so, Kelsey Howard is someone that visited in the first week and was kind of the marquee name, one of the marquee names that first weekend. He really, really likes Arizona. Took an official visit out to Oregon State, really liked Oregon State. So it could be a battle for him. But, I think he really, has liked a lot about what he's seen from Arizona. So I think there's some names that are going to pop up that at least Arizona is very, sitting in a very good spot with, that I think could eventually pick Arizona down the road.
Boy, that's exciting. Boy, it's just great talking about awesome recruiting news for once. We went years without talking about anything that was really positive. Let's be honest. All right. So we've got an issue here on the football team, and it's a good problem to have, but there are 5 quarterbacks in that quarterback room, Matt, who can play or expect to play at some point. How many of them will be on the roster come the San Diego State game, and which ones do you not think will be there?
I mean, I think the same 2 that everybody thinks won't be there. I mean, there's 3 that really have a shot at winning the starting job, or at least having a chance to play at some point. Jordan McLeod has the experience. Noah Fafita has the fresh arm and the excitement and the production during spring ball. And Jaden Delora is the proven guy. I mean, to me, I don't think, and I was talking to someone else about this today earlier, I just don't think Arizona goes and brings in Jaden Delora if he's not going to be playing. I mean, I just don't think that's it's just, I don't expect that to happen. I think he's going to be out there starting game 1. But as I mentioned before on this show,
even going back to last year, I think Noah Fafita is going to find his way onto the field in some capacity. He has 4 games he can use if he wants to use his red shirt. Arizona has under Jeff Fish hasn't really necessarily worried about that too much. They kind of just play guys however they feel, and we'll worry about the red shirt situation later. I think he gets on the field. Jordan McLeod is the interesting one. When he was out there, he looked, pretty sharp, when last season, when he was able to kind of get things rolling and then ran into the injuries. So, he does have the experience on his side. That could be, something that helps him. And that could be a key for Arizona if they want to move this thing forward. But I just come back to, I don't think you bring in Jaden DeLora, who was the Pac-12 freshman of the year and one of the top producing quarterbacks in the league, to have him sit behind a true freshman or have him sit behind a guy who was injured last year. I just don't think that's the case. And maybe I'll be wrong, but I just don't see that happening. And that leaves Will Plummer and Gunnar Cruz to figure out what they want to do. I'm surprised a little bit that both of them decided to stay. Obviously, if you're transferring now, you're talking about next year because you can't really do anything at this point. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's too tough to say. I don't like to get into those discussions too much because I'm not in those rooms with them. I'm not discussing those things with them and their families. But, it feels like those are the 2 guys that, are going to be on the outside looking in. And so we'll see what happens.
I mean, you don't like to wildly speculate. That's no fun, man. All right, let's pivot to basketball because of course, as soon as Eric and I got our podcast done last week, right afterwards, Arizona gets a couple of transfers finally, and putting Eric's mind at ease a little bit with Courtney Ramey out of Texas, Cedric Henderson out of Campbell. Just a quick overview: how do you think each guy factors in to the team next season, and is either likely to make their way into the starting lineup, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I think both have a very good chance to be in the starting lineup. I mean, to me, you look at them and you go, one is to replace Dalen Terry and one is to replace Ben. I mean, to me, that seems very obvious. I think that was the clear goal, was to find, guys to replace those 2. Obviously, you found some bigs. Henry Visar is obviously coming in, is going to provide some depth up front. But, I think with Courtney Ramey, I think he's probably the more intriguing of the 2. I really like what Cedric Henderson brings to the table. I think he kind of got a raw deal when he committed, and a lot of Arizona fans were like, who's this guy? We've never even heard of Campbell. Their mascot is the Camels, that type of deal. And without actually looking at his game and looking, at what he's done, and he's a really impressive player. I think he's going to, provide some depth, but I think he has a chance to, push for some starting time and, be a factor for this team. I don't think he would have, came to Arizona if not. But Courtney Ramey is the interesting one because he really was, really strong and, had a really good start to his career at Texas and then kind of fluttered a little bit, with the coaching change. But I'm really intrigued by him. I think he has a lot of talent. I think he has the capability to really be, a true starter on this team and someone who can make an impact. And I think that's a big part of why he picked Arizona, is because I think he feels like, he can fill a role similar to Ben or, someone on this team who is able to, really make a strong impact. And, Texas Tech really wanted him. And, there's different schools involved. Not Texas Tech. Texas Tech was Cedric Henderson. West Virginia really wanted Courtney Ramey and really pushed him. Thought they had him at one point.
Yeah.
And that's another program that could really use him, but he decides to go with Arizona. And I think the appeal of playing for Tommy Lloyd and playing in this system and being able to kind of replicate some of the things they did last year was really appealing. But I really like his game. I think he fits in well with what they want to do, and we'll kind of see how this team comes together. I mean, the one thing, and I've been telling people this, I was able to watch KJ Lewis last week at the Pangos All-American camp, which kind of brings the top collection of talent together. I hadn't seen him in a while, and I was like, wow, this guy is really, really good. And I don't think even Arizona fans give him enough credit for how good he is. I mean, I did not think that he was necessarily a one and done type of player. Now I'm almost sure of it, because I mean, I just think he has so much talent. He really had that on display. He's really coming into his own as a player, and it's going to be, I think, difficult to keep him in school, because I think he's going to hear, a lot of that conversation, because I think he is going to be very, very good at Arizona. So, I know a lot of the concern is about the here and now and what are they going to do in this upcoming season. But when I looked at 2023, when you look at, they're very, very much in play with KJ Evans, Kwame Evans, who's the number 5 recruit in the country right now, a 5-star talent, a 6'9" forward who could do a lot of different things, probably taking the lead at this point over Oregon. You're talking about 3 top 25 recruits and maybe potentially 2 5-star recruits in that group. And that's something that I think should really excite Arizona fans. Yes, it's all about the here and now. You want them to make, a Final Four right now, but the future is really, really bright. And I think I got reassured of that, watching KJ Lewis the other day.
Last question for you, Matt. I asked Bruce Pascoe this question last week, and I'll ask you. Of the returning players for Arizona men's hoops next season, who do you think is poised to make the biggest leap forward?
I think the easy kind of cop-out answer is Adama Ball.
Yeah.
I really like his game. He didn't live up. I tweeted it out. He didn't live up to my tweet. He didn't let me seem like a guru then. I said I thought he was going to have a really impact play in the NCAA tournament. I thought he just felt like the type of player who's going to step up in a big moment, and then you go, okay, this is the springboard to, next season and him really taking over. I really do think he has that type of talent. I think he has that capability of being someone who could really be a star for this team. Just watching him play in the little spurts that we did, he's really talented, and I think he fits what they want to do. And so I think he's someone that I think, and it's tough to say because we didn't get to see him a ton to say that he's going to make a huge jump, but I think he will. I think he'll, at least in terms of production, I think he will have a big jump, and I think he's going to be a big part of what they want to do.
All right, Professor, last question. Thank you as always for joining Shane and I. I had to put you on the spot at one point. So which is more likely on paper to you to happen this next school year? Arizona football to make a bowl game or Arizona men's basketball to make the Elite Eight? Which is more likely?
The Elite Eight. I think football is still a year away.
Really?
Yeah. I think they've done a good job of plugging some holes, but I think of, T-Mac as a sophomore. I think that's where you start to see the start to really shine.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these guys, once they get, some more time in the system, Jonah Coleman gets another year. I think there's so much young talent at the positions that are key that I think it's going to take some time. I do think there's going to be progress, no doubt. I'd be pretty shocked if there isn't progress. If there isn't progress, there's going to have some problems because now we're getting to a point where recruiting wise, recruits are no longer going to be able to be sold on the vision and the future and, promises of what's to come. They're going to want to start to see, real wins in production and, things getting done on the field. So we're getting to that point where there needs to be some steps forward, but not quite there yet. But I think for Arizona, I think it's still a year away from really, taking that next step. And I really like this basketball team. I think it's going to be underrated again. I think people will not, believe that they're capable of doing a lot of good things, but it'll definitely be different. But I do think that they have a chance. I mean, a slim chance. I'm not saying either one is great this year.
Sure.
I think probably Sweet 16 is probably the cap for the basketball team. I think if you can get to the Sweet 16, I think you feel very fulfilled by this season because it's just a different team than last year. It's not as talented right now. But they surprised us last season, so we'll see what happens. But I think that would probably be more likely than the football team winning 6 games. I think they're still a year away. I think there's going to be progress, like I said, but still think they're a year away from really making that big jump.
Well, Matt, we always appreciate having you on the show. Class is now dismissed. Thanks for joining us again on Wildcat Country.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys.
My head is still unpacking from all the info that we learned from Matt Moreno. He's encouraged, about the basketball commits. So that's nice to hear, Shane. I know the one thing that I took away was the last question, obviously. We're both surprised by that.
Yeah.
And he believes that Arizona has a better chance to get to the Elite Eight than the Wildcats football team does of making a bowl game. I'm just really shocked by that.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this, Eric. I don't think they're going to get to a bowl game this year, partly because, like what Matt said, they're still a very young team, and because, like we talked about as well, their schedule is brutal. It's tougher than it was last year. But I do think that they probably have a better chance of winning 6 games in football than they have of getting to the Elite Eight in men's basketball. With that said, the NCAA tournament is such a crapshoot that if you just get in and get hot, you never know. So if the question is, will Arizona be one of the top 8 teams next season in men's basketball? Maybe that's a different question. But and like I said, in 92 and 93, Arizona was a 3 seed, a 2 seed. They lost in the first round each time.
Right. You never know.
They win the whole thing as a 4 seed. So you get in, you get hot, and an 8 seed or 9 seed Arizona team could go further in the tournament than the top seeded cast did the last season. So you just never know.
And you look at it, Shane. I mean, look at St. Peter's makes an Elite Eight. So you never know. Okay,
or UCLA the year before that gets the Final Four is what a 12 seed.
Yeah, I mean something like that. The playing game. Yeah. All right. So want to congratulate our fans. Really cool to see. I believe softball is number 1 in the Pac-12 in attendance. Women's basketball, men's basketball, both number one in the conference in attendance, and baseball is number two. I mean, that is incredibly impressive.
I would not have guessed that. I mean, with men's and women's basketball, that's great. We're seeing that following now, because I remember back when I covered the team for the Daily Wildcat back in 03-04, they were a top 25 team, but they got maybe 3,000 or 4,000 fans a game.
Right.
And so what Adia Barnes is doing in turning out fans has been massive. I think certainly their NCAA tournament run last year and their WNIT run several years before that, which I really think did a great job creating that sense of community between fans and the team. I think that was a big deal. Softball and baseball, I guess I'm surprised, partly not because the fans are passionate. We know that Tucson is very much a college town, one of the best college towns in the country, which I say with a heavy bias, but just the heat that you get later in the season, you would think would keep some fans away. Whereas in a lot of other Pac-12 schools where they're located, it's really nice in April and May, and not so much in Tucson.
And not only that, though, Shane, I mean, baseball and softball, for what we had seen in previous years, the regular seasons were not to that caliber. Let's be honest. So for them to do that well, that's pretty impressive.
I'm thinking though, on baseball and softball too, you have a lot of regulars, a lot of people who have the season tickets, and they're going to come regardless. People who have been fans, been going to games religiously for 20 or 30 years. So I think that helps, is that even in poor seasons, or poorer, relative to how they usually go, I think that's probably why you don't see a big fluctuation or a big downturn in fan support.
But Shane, you saw the conference had two teams in baseball, for example, that were in the top five, and Arizona outdrew one of them. I mean, think about that. That's really impressive. All right. Before we go on this show, we got to make picks for something. It's the College World Series. It's been absolute carnage for the top teams, but somehow there are 4 seeded teams left. Stanford, the 2 seed, A&M, the 5 seed, Texas 9, Auburn 14. Shane, give me your championship series pick of the 2 teams, and then who is going to win it all.
I'm going to stick, as far as winning it all, I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I'm going to go with the team that knocked off Tennessee. Yeah, the team that beat the best. I think back to when Arizona won it all in 2012. I don't believe Arizona was seeded that year. I think that they went on the road and won a regional. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they sort of they ran the table, and I think that Notre Dame maybe does it this year. So I don't remember exactly what the brackets are. So as far as picking the which teams are going to meet in the championship game, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I kind of like Notre Dame to keep the momentum going.
All right. So bracket 1, A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame. That's it. I mean, you talk about, as far as rivalry goes, if you're a Texas fan, Oklahoma and A&M in there, and Notre Dame.
And they met in the Oklahoma and Texas met in softball.
Right. I mean, crazy. And then in bracket 2 is Stanford, Auburn, Arkansas, and Ole Miss, who have, as we might remember, knocked out Arizona with two losses. And then they shut out for 2 games Southern Miss, who beat Jay Johnson's LSU team. I'm going to go with Stanford to win it all. I know I'm tasting the chalk here. I just think Stanford is the best team left.
I'm backing the pack.
I'm backing the pack, and I'm going to say they beat Oklahoma. I don't know. Oklahoma's had a heck of a run. Softball, they had one of the all-time great softball teams this year, back-to-back champions. I'm going to say they're going to make it to the baseball finals and lose to Stanford in 3 games. So it's going to be an exciting College World Series in Omaha.
Let me take this a little sideways real quick, Eric. Are you really a back the pack guy? Because I feel like you're supposed to, I mean, other than your rival, you're supposed to back the conference if you're not, your team's not in it. I've never really felt that way. It's like, I want to, I focus on, on my Wildcats beating these teams all year. And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to flip the switch and root for them.
When it comes to a sport like baseball, softball, women's basketball, where maybe I'm not as passionate or on top of things as I would be for football and men's basketball, I am fully a back the pack as long as it's not ASU person.
That's fair.
As far as when it comes to basketball and football, it depends how Arizona did against that particular team.
Yeah.
Like UCLA, for example, this year. I mean, it was hard to want to see UCLA do well because of their rivalry with Arizona in basketball. in football, I was like, sure, great. Let anybody other than ASU do great in the Pac. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not a big back-to-back guy. A couple of exceptions. I was glad to see the Pac-12 do as well as it did in the NCAA tournament a year ago, because you get just that exposure. Maybe the Pac-12 will eventually get back to close to where it was back in the 90s and the 80s. And then I also enjoyed watching Oregon State win the College World Series a few years back, just because I feel like they're the ugly stepchild to Oregon these days with all the Nike money Oregon gets. So I kind of like to see Oregon State win something. With that said, most of the time, no, I don't root for the Pac-12 schools like Utah. I wanted to see Utah lose in the Rose Bowl because you know what? My team has never won the Rose Bowl, never even gotten there. So I don't want to see any other school, Pac-12 school win it. And I am that petty, and I am not ashamed to say it. I was rooting against Utah in the Pac.
I'm shocked, Shane. I never thought I would hear that from you. I just want to say this though: Arizona baseball swept Stanford in March at home, and now Stanford, they got hot, and now they are among the favorites to win the national. They're probably the favorite right now to win the national championship. Think about that. So you know what? I'm all about Stanford right now. Let's go. Let's go Cardinal. Thanks to Matt Moreno for joining us once again. Always a great source of information. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.